In preparation of entering the graces of Last Forever, the 9th track on Red's Rated R out of the 10-track lineup, we're quickly nearing the conclusion, but it's been a fun retreat all the same. And this is true to how I've approached Red generally on this album, or really in this channel's history. I mean, Red is a rather recent name to appear here, though they've been a long-time aspiration to highlight. I try to find ways to best individualize each number in discussion. And the identity of Last Forever, I mean, I can say this with the song, of course, appearing by Reintroduction status. I've qualified before why that is, though in the beginning I promised you a full album survey on Fresh Impression Witness, but if you want to go reference for Suffering, you can understand all the bumps in the road that took place to get here. Life had other intentions, or specifically my technology. Anyway, if you forgive a slight deviation in our course together, this is still fine, but it gives me a slight familiarity, though again, I've intentionally separated myself from this last half of the record to give you as fresh of a re-entrance as possible, but I remember some things, lightly. What I can say about early entrance of Last Forever, on individual standing, or in presence of the second half of the record, or as a piece of Rated R, it faithfully expresses a spirit of individuality. It does feel slightly differentiated, and we'll explore some of those elements, of course, when we entertain the piece together, but it does feel, by its own exploration, slightly in contrast to other Red eras of album releases. And yet, it still has that Red root focus, just even in connection to other appearances on this record, which I've said, there's an assertive foothold in that arena, that if you want Red roots, you get Red roots. But sometimes you have to really dig for those to appreciate them, but they're still ever present. Some of them are a little more superficial. I think Last Forever, if I had to give a good contrast to this, and it's a rather complex phenomenon to explain, so forgive me if maybe it's not best worded. You know, sometimes you try to express things in the way that you're thinking, like, I know exactly what I want to say, but I don't know how to get it to come out right. I'm going to try to give you the best approximate I can. Last Forever has the most... Well, let's speak on this in an individual respect. Last Forever bears the most evident superficial facade of Innocence and Instinct as an appearance on the record. Though maybe, again, there's adjacency on root presences to other tracks' remarks with, again, reflection on Innocence and Instinct, a favorite of mine in our library, one of the earlier entrances. And, you know, I might have said for a long while, though Rated R has slightly changed discussion and experiences, and maybe how I go forward, I've been saying for a long time A Beauty and Rage is my favorite record, though I don't want to undercut any of Red's releases. They're all great. I've loved each piece, each album collection on multiple re-listens, but A Beauty and Rage was the one I returned most frequently to, and then I'm like, in the course of our journey together, I realized, wait a minute, Gone also has that potential, and now that I think about it, Innocence and Instinct also has that type of ride. Innocence and Instinct is in particular a great collection. I think on that one, readily, is just a beautiful experience. And one that... Do I want to spoil you? Or do I want to keep this veiled? You know, this is appearing by Reintroduction status and how we're navigating Rated R together in the second half. And I'm mulling over possibilities of extending that to their past library, maybe with Innocence and Instinct. I don't want to get ahead of myself, though. I'll keep you hanging as to what that might look like. Anyway, I think you can maybe infer exactly what I'm debating. And knowing me, I'll probably actualize. Now, to jump back into Last Forever, though, I think it does share that common foundation of other Rated R tracks, and again, that Red Roots foundation. But the appearance, and the intersection specifically on Innocence and Instinct, I think this wears the skin of a past album release, especially on key choice. That's where I really noticed this. I think it's most evident here, again, like I said, in its facade. And we'll see again, it will be reminded, perhaps, if you're in my shoes, a good mixture of those various Red elements. It just, to me, comes across as being so closely tied on key mainstay to Innocence and Instinct that it makes it quite interesting, even just on Reminiscence. And, you know, I have found that my interests in favorability of Rated R, of where I've gravitated most in terms of individualized songs, and this is, you know, true to me being a metalhead, I tend to prefer the more aggressive voice. So some of the other pieces on this record might have a more immediate draw for me. But Last Forever I still find to be quite a promising piece. But I think what's so special about the second half is it's really in the intricacies that you see that fine-tuning on Vision. And it makes the second half, I think, on a steady, even more special. And plus, I like to take deep dives on things. This is just natural, I do this. I know some probably just like, just view the superficial experience, and hey, that's fine. Again, Red allows for enjoyment however you look at them, right? If you want just an entertaining listen that you can just plug into, you got that, and just sit with it immediately. Or you can do what I do and exhaust your brain and overwork yourself into being like, let's take a deep analytical introspection on each piece. But I like to give pieces their due diligence, and I think I try to emphasize again with respect to Rated R, there is something special I think about the second half, but it's in the process of digging. But you start to see that really unique voice. Again, that's true to the entirety of Rated R, but it's really focused again, I would say, on some slight invention of familiarized voice and methods in these last 5 pieces, including Last Forever. Our 9th piece towards the conclusion stage, which is bittersweet. I like covering Red, even though, again, this has been quite a journey. I didn't expect to have to do it over in the beginning. I'm like, I thought we went through it on Fresh Initiation Status. I delivered on what I promised you, and then again, I won't go back into that. Anywho, it's been a ride of Red, but it's been fun to re-enter a little earlier than I foresaw. I did leave it in the beginning, as I can remember it, as I do with any artist generally, on the open door status. Anything new comes, policy here is I'm ready and waiting for Red, of course, but... I expected we have to wait a little bit for that to happen, but we're back with Red. Unforeseen circumstances, but hey, I deliver on my word to you, even as late as I am. So, Last Forever. Let's humor it together. And you'll see, I think, what I mean in terms of, again, that evident innocence and instinct voice. You'll really notice that immediately. And I'll be reminded, of course, maybe of some of the other individualized traits that come through on this. Innocence and instinct and gone. It's a mix of both, but again, that dreary key, that troubled nature, don't you sense innocence and instinct immediately? And End of Silence. It's both. Lost and alone, and it's most evident with the strings. Traces of yourself cutting through my mind. God, the vocals. I love this key. It's a favorite of mine, and again, how close it feels to earlier eras. There's that feminine touch on the background vocals again, I think. I mean, that was just a really high pitch. It sounded to me like that earlier voiceover from one of the other numbers in the first half. I don't think I noticed it before either in the previous encounter. As I said, fresh reintroduction. I still appreciate the defined, aggressive root is ever present on this song, though it does feel softer. And the background vocals too are really good here. I'm starting to like this number even more on a second listen with all of you. I thought it was fine at first, but now again I'm really noticing the intricacies. The repetition here is rather unique. I can't think of an example in past albums where it's been that extensive. Maybe lightly. I think it's a great listen, and it means more now. On a re-entrant status with it, let me pose this question to all of you. Again, music is a subjective experience, so we all might approach it differently, especially in our survey of different numbers, but I'm curious with this one. How many of you on a second humoring, or whatever status you are on it with Last Forever's respect, I mean, you could have humored this maybe 20 times, I don't know. Do you feel lured in, even more so than you did on a first humoring? I will admit that on first entrance, and this is true to what I said in early reflection, that, and it's true to what I've said generally now, that I like the entirety of Rated R, but there are pieces that are more specific in terms of them being a pull with me. This is really interesting on the second half of the album. These last 5 pieces, with exception to Still Bleeding, that one's still so good, that one immediately clicks, but the other 4, I felt a closer connection on favorability to the earlier 5 numbers, and Still Bleeding. But on a reentrant status, these 4 numbers are sinking in a bit better. And I could see again, and I think again how I approach, right? Red plays around in different extremes, and I'll be the first to admit that in the spectrum of offerings on tone and execution and energy of different songs, I more than readily jump immediately to the harsher pieces. But I have, a good respect and opinion of the softer numbers too. There's a great variance among their works. Though again, I could imagine for metalheads and other rock fans like myself who are fans of those earlier roots and albums, that our heart with Red really lies in that aggressive declaration. How do you feel about this number? Again, on reentrance status, admittedly, the first time I listened to it, I don't think it pulled me in as much as it does now. And I remembered the root. Okay, let me explain this again. I've mentioned this before, again, in summary of re-entering the graces of Rated R. I kept it specific to the suffering and explanation, but I will say, when I first covered the album on Fresh Initiation Witness, I went for the whole thing in one day. So where you will see, in terms of what I published, Tell Me How to Say Goodbye, I covered it even after that point. That same day, I covered those 7 numbers. It's just the last 5 I couldn't publish because of an audio error. After I listened to that, the following day gave the album one full playthrough. I think there's another day I did the same. And then I found out right after that, all the recordings didn't work. So anyway, I'm like, okay. It's been some time, though. So generally, it's been like maybe 2 or 3 times. Twice I think I've humored this. Yeah, because I didn't get so far in my first re-listen of the album to track 8. I think I've only heard this number in anticipation of those earlier encounters as it would have been 2 times. Anyway, in those earlier occasions, it didn't click with me as much as it does now. And I remembered again that Innocence and Instinct root. Although now that I think about it, actually, maybe I'll revise it. It's more explicitly, I would say, on tone. What track is it off of? Hang on, I'm going to pull this up for reference. I'm getting more of an End of Silence vibe. Maybe I didn't... Well, I think, again, there's that melancholy nature to it that makes it, that it might be that it's not as much key. I might maybe revise this a bit. I think it's more so the mood of Innocence and Instinct. I could be wrong on this. Well, there's some numbers that maybe bear a connection to it, and on pacing as well. On Innocence and Instinct, maybe there is an intersection, but it's more definitively End of Silence. What piece is it on that record? It might be Break Me Down, even though that one's harsher. I love that one. I have such fond memories of listening to that in my early days of it, my tween arrival to this group. Oh, I love that song. I think it really is Break Me Down. I'm getting that nostalgic rewind vibe, especially on the entrance to this piece with the synth application, which, in fellowship of the entire record, that opening is true. Well, not necessarily the entirety, but certainly the second half. The softer interlude again that switches a little later, though. By comparison, because we enter the graces of Last Forever, and the first couple of verses are a little softer. The vocals here are perfect, by the way. Again, blended to that key, it's a great balance. The narrative is interesting, too. I don't think they've ever utilized such heavy repetition in one of their pieces. Maybe there's been a light touch of that. Certainly not as drawn out. I like the the scream intermixing, though. Again, their vocals are always high profile. I love Michael. He can sing so well. One of my favorites in the rock sphere, for definitively speaking. I love the guy. That layered scream added on a lot. I could see, I thought it was interesting. Again, heavily differentiated. I could see it maybe being an element that might not be the most extensive draw necessarily. Again, I'm trying to be fair on this. We all approach these songs differently in terms of our review and our independent thoughts. I'm saying I could see perhaps a possibility where that might be of question. And even I'm still navigating it myself. Again, I think the Scream does a lot to elevate it. That particular touch, I know it's in the background, but I appreciate it. I think it's a fitting layer for that to work. And maybe that was meant sort of as an agent to keep the momentum at a same even level. That could have been the idea. And I mean, it does speak to the truth of the narrative, though, again, just even on a light survey, I'm as well of what I've been saying in past reflection on the second half of Rated R, I'm seeing a more defined, a strict message and exploration. And that is true to the identity of this record. The calling out your name line, again, sounds so explicit on energy, but it does play into the chorus sections, at least on Mission. And again, there's maybe a bit of a broad window that's allowed and permitted by the song and the artist. Likewise, though there might be, again, a defined invention, we can approach it differently. There is a good generalizability, I think, on an explanation that is true to their narratives. But it's welcome. Again, on second analysis and reprisal exposure, I think it helps to make some of these second numbers click. I could see, again, a greater advantage in really the first half of the record, and Still Bleeding especially. I could see favorability resting more in those pieces where there could be a risk of a drift in those numbers being an afterthought. But what I think is so interesting again about the second half is the definition on independent focus with these numbers. There is a defined individuality to Rated R, and that's becoming really specific with these last couple of pieces when you get into a deep level with them. Last Forever especially, I mean, I'm revising what I said. I think it is more definitively, it has the intersection of past Red eras, whether it be on mood in Innocence and Instinct's respect or key choice. Definitively, I think it's Break Me Down that I'm getting, again, that connective thread. So it feels, again, like it really bears the skin of an older Red song. You think of Last Forever sort of as a tangible appearance, and it looks like End of Silence, if you could picture it that way. It appears so directly as an older release that it feels somewhat separated from other pieces that are displayed more like a mixture. Rated R deliberately cherry picks different traits from past Red eras and compiles them in tight, constrained windows. Last Forever, I think, is the one that appears most superficially as one album retread ride, I think. If that makes sense, again, it's hard to explain, but hopefully you're getting a gist for what I mean. I didn't go this deep in terms of first explanation. Again, I think reevaluating these pieces helps to enjoy them a little more. And I think it'd be fair to say that Last Forever is given an advantage through that. I do. And other pieces on that second half also share in that respect. I would love to hear your thoughts down below on this one. And again, music, independently subjective in how we approach. So I welcome any thoughts as well as your individual vantage point if you wish to declare it. Longtime fan or initiate listener. What do you think of that one? And if you are humoring that initiation status, go listen to Break Me Down off of End of Silence at the very least. Again, I recommend anything from the past library if you want to venture deeper. But if you listen to that one, I think you'll sense exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, you'll see for yourself, right? I'm going to go interview it, in fact, for my own personal sake, but the more I examine the second half, the more I respect it. Again, from the songs that I felt didn't as readily connect as those harsher numbers, now they're starting to get a bit of a groove of me where if I conjure an image of me entertaining these pieces in future occurrence on repeat exposure, I'm starting to get an added level of appreciation. Maybe that's just me, but I see that potential with the second half. Again, Rated R is quite special in energy and declaration. Again, no pun intended. I'm probably going to use that word a lot. Anyway, it's interesting to study this album, generally speaking, but the second half, and in particular of Last Forever, the identities we're exploring here together, they're specific, but they're quite interesting, and of course, considering Red, respectable. It makes you curious to humor a lot of these pieces again on a reinitiation status, and perhaps that's the intention that that's what these works deserve. I think Last Forever does. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.